I'm Hailey Grant, single mom, freelance everything, the kind of relative who only hears about reunions after the photos are posted. So when I got an email labeled Caldwell Grant Family Reunion, I thought it was spam until I opened it and saw my name on the list. I wasn't supposed to see the message. It was meant for family only, and apparently I've only ever counted as family by blood, not by belonging. No one texted, no one called, just one line from Mom. If you come, wear something nice. You know how Aunt Linda gets. But I didn't cry. I didn't complain. I packed a dress that barely fit and told my daughter we were going somewhere special, not to fit in, but to show up anyway. If you've ever been left out of your own story, this one's for you. Drop a comment if you've ever been the forgotten one. Like this video if you've ever smiled through exclusion and kept standing. Subscribe because sometimes the quietest voice in the room ends up owning the house. The email had slipped through. Somewhere between another rejection from the downtown diner and a "we'll keep your resume on file" from a temp agency, it landed in my inbox like a joke told behind someone's back. Only the punchline was me. I stared at it, blinking in the dusty light of the afternoon. The air conditioner gave up the ghost last Tuesday, so every breath in this apartment felt like breathing through a wet towel. Outside, someone was yelling again, probably the couple in 2C. Their fights were as punctual as the mailman and twice as loud. The subject line read, "Caldwell Grant Reunion, RSVP by June 10th. I almost deleted it without reading. I thought it was a glitch. I wasn't invited to these things. Not really. Last Christmas, Mom told me, "You probably wouldn't want to come. It's mostly couples this year." The time before that, Chelsea had written, "Don't stress about the dress code, Hailey. We know you'll be practical." But this one had no filter, no password wall, no selective memory. It was sent to everyone, including me. "Mama, is that a party?" Mia's voice startled me. She was perched on the edge of the couch, Lego bricks scattered around her like bright confetti. Her hair was wild and curly and perfect. She had the kind of curiosity that hadn't yet learned to be afraid of answers. I hesitated. Yeah, some kind of family get-together. Her eyes lit up like I'd offered her a rocket to the moon. "Can we go? Can we? I was already shaking my head. "It's for—" I stopped. What was I about to say? "It's for people who don't forget to call. It's for people who can afford dry cleaning. It's not for us." "I'll think about it," I lied, because the hope in her face was too much to crush outright. After she bounded back to her Lego fort, I picked up the phone. Mom answered on the third ring. "Hailey," she said, in that tone she used when trying not to sound like she was checking caller ID first. "Everything okay?" "I saw the reunion invite," I said. There was a pause, then a tight chuckle. "Oh well, that must have been a mistake. You know those lists? Chelsea probably used the master contact list from her wedding." I waited, gave her space to fix it. To say, "But of course we want you there, sweetheart. It's been too long." Instead, "Anyway, if you come, make sure you wear something nice. You know how Aunt Linda gets about appearances." I hung up before my voice cracked. In the bedroom, I rummaged through the bottom drawer. That's where I kept the dress Chelsea gave me last year. Soft beige, thin fabric, sleeves that didn't quite match. She'd handed it over in a glossy shopping bag with a smirk. "You'll probably get more use out of this than I will." I held it up now, wondering if it still smelled like her perfume. It didn't. It smelled like my closet. Dust and desperation. From the living room, Mia's voice floated in, "Should I bring the Lego flowers or the real ones?" She was already planning. I sat on the edge of the bed, the dress bunched in my hands. There was a moment, maybe a second, maybe a year, where I let myself feel the weight of all the parties I'd never been part of. All the rooms I'd never been welcome in. Not fully. Not the way Chelsea had been. Not the way golden child Ethan still was. My eyes drifted to the dresser drawer, half open. Inside, buried under unopened bills and Mia's vaccination records, was the envelope. Thick paper, fancy font. The kind lawyers used when they wanted you to pay attention. Ethan Caldwell, estate attorney. I shut the drawer. Mia appeared, barefoot, holding a Lego box like it was treasure. I want to give this to Grandma. She says flowers die fast, but Lego ones last forever. I smiled, and something twisted behind my ribs. She didn't know. She didn't know the things people said when they thought she wasn't listening. She didn't know the way her mother had been described. The single one, the mistake, the burden. And if I had my way, she never would. I stood, slipped into the dress, and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a guest. I didn't see family. I saw someone who was going to show up anyway. I wasn't going to let Mia see what I'd been through. But I had no idea she was about to see who I really was. The party smelled like money and sunscreen. Two things I hadn't had in abundance in years. The air shimmered with heat as I stepped through the side gate into Derek's backyard. Mia's hand was clasped in mine, sticky with excitement and juice residue. The bounce house loomed in the distance, its garish reds and yellows clashing with the minimalist cream and gold decor. It felt like walking onto the set of a lifestyle magazine spread. Only I hadn't been cast for the role. The last time I was here, I was helping Chelsea tape the corners of moving boxes before her wedding. I'd folded her lingerie with trembling fingers and listened to her gush about Derek's promotion and the honeymoon in Monaco. She had called me her favorite sister-in-law then. I had believed her. I had believed I belonged. Chelsea appeared at the top of the patio steps like a swan descending a marble staircase. Her dress was white, designer, and effortlessly wrinkle-free. Mine, beige and borderline transparent in sunlight, clung to my hips like it was begging for forgiveness. She saw me, and her smile curved like a blade. "Oh," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "That dress still fits." Mia didn't notice the tone. She beamed up at her aunt. "Aunt Chelsea, I brought you something." Chelsea bent gracefully to accept the Lego bouquet, pretending to admire it. "Oh my, so creative. Mia, sweetie, why don't you go bounce a bit? Adults are boring." Mia scampered off toward the bounce house, her curls bouncing with her. "Hailey," Margaret's voice crooned from behind me. She wore pearls the size of grapes and a sun hat that could blot out a heat wave. "You didn't need to bring anything. Mia is the gift." There it was, wrapped in silk and pity. I smiled, tight-lipped. I wanted to say, "You're welcome for raising her without asking you for a dime." Instead, I nodded. She was really excited. Margaret turned to greet a passing guest, leaving me alone in a sea of white linen and forced laughter. The buffet table stretched like a runway across the lawn. Shrimp cocktails, glass pitchers of sangria, miniature quiches, all under tiny parasols. I didn't dare touch anything. I could already hear someone whispering, "Don't let her pack leftovers." "Where are you working now?" a man in sunglasses asked. I didn't know his name. He wore a blazer despite the heat. "Oh, just between things," I said quickly. "Freelance gigs." He smiled politely. Translation, unemployed. I drifted to the seating area, rows of white chairs with gold ribbons, name cards clipped in cursive. I didn't see mine. Chelsea was nearby, arms looped with Derek, who was nodding at something he wasn't listening to. "All couples sit in front," she said sweetly. "Singles probably don't mind sitting below. It's cooler in the shade." Before I could respond, someone tapped my shoulder and gestured for the seat I'd taken. Chelsea's friends, matching sunglasses, matching teeth. I gave it up. There was nowhere else to go but the grass. I found a patch near the edge, away from the umbrellas. It prickled my thighs through the thin fabric of the dress. I could feel eyes. Not all at once, but in slow waves. Like the heat, like judgment. They weren't being cruel outright. That would have been easier. No, they were amused. Amused that I had shown up, that I had sat down, that I had brought my child and dared to smile like I belonged. I picked at the hem of my dress and felt the flush rising on my neck. Across the lawn, I spotted Amy Quinn standing near the coffee table. She caught my eye briefly, and for a split second, her expression shifted. Not pity, not scorn, recognition. But she turned away just as quickly. I didn't blame her. Mia emerged from the bounce house, cheeks red, her shoes in one hand. She scanned the yard until her eyes locked on me. Her mother sitting on the ground like a forgotten guest at a wedding. She took one step toward me, frown forming. I gave her a look. Not angry, not pleading. Just enough. She paused, understood, then turned back toward the juice station. The moment passed. I could feel my spine pressing into the grass. The sun bore down. The laughter around me grew louder, less human. And through it all, I held onto my smile like it was armor. I smiled through my shame. I'd been here before, but this time I wasn't leaving empty-handed. The gate clicked, the music faded, and suddenly everyone stopped pretending they weren't watching me. It was like a chord had snapped mid-song. Up until that second, everything was normal, or whatever passed for normal in this curated chaos. Children squealed from the bounce house. Ice clinked in crystal glasses. The sun hung lower, casting the whole garden in a warm amber glow, like someone had draped a film filter over a reality that wasn't mine. Then came the click. The metallic, unhurried sound of the side gate unlatching. The conversation stuttered. Someone turned down the speaker, playing top 40 hits. A few heads turned toward the entrance. And when they saw him, they didn't look away. The man in the suit walked in like he didn't need permission. Dark blue, tailored to precision, polished shoes stepping gently onto the party's pristine stone path. He wasn't young, but not old either. Clean-shaven, impossibly calm. Ethan Caldwell. Chelsea's lips twitched into a hostess smile, confused but committed. Hi there. Are you with the catering team? Because I think the cupcakes go near the... I'm not here for the desserts, he said mildly, holding a thick envelope in one hand. I'm here for Hailey Grant. My name hit the air like a clap. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just blinked up at him from my little patch of grass, trying to remember how to breathe. Oh, Chelsea said, the smile slipping. Hailey's here, but she's just... I know, Ethan said, already walking past her. Mia was frozen beside me, her hand wrapped around my finger. I gave it a small squeeze. Her eyes darted between us. He stopped in front of me, just enough distance to be formal but not performative. He bowed his head slightly. Ms. Grant, I apologize for the interruption, but the timing was necessary. The crowd was entirely quiet now. I heard someone drop a fork on a plate. Ethan opened the envelope and unfolded a set of documents. I'm here on behalf of the estate of Eleanor Whitmore, he said clearly. In accordance with her final will, witnessed and filed last month, she has designated you, Ms. Hailey Grant, as the sole beneficiary of her estate. There was no gasp, just the sound of an entire party holding its breath. You are now the legal owner of all Eleanor Whitmore's assets, including her liquid holdings of $2.3 million in this residence, located at 48 Henley Avenue. The silence cracked. Chelsea let out a laugh, sharp and wrong. This house? This is our house. Eleanor promised it to Derek and me. There has to be a mistake. Ethan didn't blink. There is no mistake. The lease agreement under which you've resided here was between Eleanor Whitmore and Whitmore Properties, LLC. It terminated upon her death, per clause 14B. Control of the estate transferred within 72 hours. Transferred to her? Margaret's voice was hoarse, her pearls rising and falling with each breath. Are you saying she owns this house? I'm saying, Ethan replied, that Ms. Grant owns everything Eleanor left behind, including this property. The documents in his hand looked impossibly thin for the weight they carried. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it again. Toby, still playing with his juice box, was the only one not paying attention. And me? I stood. The grass left faint green streaks on the back of my thighs. I brushed them off slowly, deliberately. My hands no longer trembled. Chelsea stared at me like she didn't recognize the woman she had shoved into the dirt. I turned to her. "You said single moms like me are flexible?" I said, steady as steel. "So why don't you try adapting, Chelsea?" She didn't respond. She couldn't. I felt Mia reach for my hand again, small and certain. I looked down. She was smiling, a little confused, but mostly proud. I looked back at the crowd, now watching me like a queen risen from ruin. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't sitting anymore. I didn't just own the house. I owned the moment, and they all knew it. When silence falls louder than a scream, you know the power just shifted. No one moved. The bounce house deflated quietly behind us, its colors sagging like the mood. Plates of quiche and untouched sangria glistened on the buffet table. Party music had stopped altogether. Even the kids had gone still, as if the truth hanging in the air had trickled into their games. Chelsea's hands were clenched at her sides, nails digging crescents into her perfect skin. Her voice broke the hush, soft, syrupy at first. "You don't understand, Hailey. We renovated this place. We painted every wall. Toby learned to walk here." I didn't blink. "You lived in a house that was never yours. I just found out it's mine and I'm still standing on the lawn." Derek stepped in quickly, trying to coat the situation with diplomacy. "Look, we're not saying you don't have a claim. We're just asking if we can talk, privately. There has to be a middle ground, something we can work out." Ethan was already pulling papers from his briefcase. "There's nothing ambiguous in the will or lease agreement, Mr. Grant. Your tenancy ended the moment Eleanor passed. You've had nearly 3 weeks of grace since. Legally, you have 30 days from today." Margaret placed a hand on her chest, like she was suddenly wounded by it all. "Hailey, sweetheart," she said, voice trembling with performative affection. "You can't let money divide this family. I raised you better than that. You used to be such a kind little girl." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd forgotten what her love sounded like. It always had strings. "It's not the money that changed me," I said quietly. "It's realizing I deserved better all along." Chelsea's lips parted, then closed. She took a step toward Ethan, then changed her mind. The guests, one by one, began to drift away, murmuring polite excuses, shielding their eyes from the wreckage of what had been a flawless event. Some avoided my gaze, others didn't bother. Amy Quinn walked by slowly. She didn't speak, but her eyes met mine. She pulled a small business card from her purse and handed it to me with the air of someone giving you a torch instead of a phone number. "If you ever want to build something," she said, "with real women, not porcelain ones." Then she disappeared into the fading sunlight. Chelsea turned sharply. "You can't seriously be kicking us out. This is our home. We have a life here. Toby has friends." "I had 30 years," I said flatly, "to be part of this family. And you all spent it pretending I wasn't." Her jaw tightened. I looked at Ethan. He nodded, crisp and composed, and handed over the official notice. Derek's hands shook as he accepted it. Mia tugged my hand. Her eyes sparkled like the first time she saw snow. "Are we moving here?" she whispered. I bent down to meet her eyes. "Maybe," I said, "if that's what you want." She nodded hard, already dreaming. Then I turned, facing all of them. Margaret in shock, Derek unreadable, Chelsea flailing between fury and grief. "You all had 30 years to treat me like family," I said, voice rising just enough. "Now you have 30 days to leave my house." I didn't wait for them to answer. Mia held my hand tightly, and I held hers right back as we turned away from the crowd, from the wreckage, from the performance. For once, I didn't apologize for choosing myself. Her handwriting was elegant, deliberate, like everything else they told me I wasn't. The envelope had been sitting on the kitchen table all week, untouched except for the dust that gathered near its edges. I'd moved it twice, once to wipe the table, once to make room for Mia's art project. But I hadn't dared open it. Not yet. It was the only thing Ethan had handed me privately, just before he'd left that surreal afternoon. Cream-colored, thick paper, sealed with a wax imprint I didn't recognize. Now, in the quiet of a late June night, with the window cracked open to let in the city's low hum, cars, wind, the occasional siren, I finally peeled it open. Only for Hailey, it said on the front, in slanted ink that belonged to another era. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No stationery, no logo. Just black ink, slanted letters, and the weight of a woman's final voice. Dear Hailey, I never had children. Not because I didn't want them, but because I never met a man I trusted more than myself. That alone made me a problem in my family. My father once said, "A woman alone is a legacy undone." I spent the better part of my youth trying to prove him wrong. And yet, when I saw you, when I watched how your own family dismissed you, blamed you for carrying too much, dreaming too wide, I knew what had to be done. You sent me a thank you card when you were 8. It was for a music box I gave you, the one no one else thought you'd want. You wrote, "It sounds like a story waiting to be told." I kept that card. It was the only one I ever got from your generation. They told me I was too much. They told you were never enough. We were both wronged. Now we are both seen. Whatever you build next, build it without apology. My hands trembled as I lowered the paper. I hadn't expected it to hit so hard. Not after the lawyers, the documents, the press of so many eyes. But this wasn't about legality. This was about being chosen. Chosen. Not tolerated, not pitied. Chosen. The tears came slowly at first, one, then another, until I couldn't see the letter anymore. I leaned over the table and let it out. Not from grief, not from stress, but because for once I felt like I was enough without having to earn it every damn second. Mia's footsteps were soft behind me. She climbed onto the chair beside mine, still in her pajama shirt with a dancing moon on it. "What's wrong, Mommy?" she whispered. "Nothing, baby," I said, wiping my cheek. "Someone just remembered me." She looked at the envelope, then at the music box sitting on the shelf. I hadn't touched it in years. She patted over, lifted the lid, and turned the tiny metal key. Soft notes filled the room. Slow, unsure at first, then clearer. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was enough. A lullaby that never demanded attention, but offered it anyway. "Did she love music too, Mom?" Mia asked. I looked at her. Curious, untainted, full of all the things I hadn't yet unlearned. "Yes," I said. "I think she loves stories the music couldn't say out loud." The melody floated over us, a fragile bridge between what was and what could still be. I picked up the letter again, held it to my chest. I didn't just inherit her estate. I inherited her rebellion. I didn't sit, not because there wasn't a seat, but because I didn't need one anymore. The house looked smaller in the morning light. Maybe it was the boxes by the door, or the echo in the hallway that used to be filled with Chelsea's laugh. Maybe it was just that I finally saw it for what it was. A house, not a pedestal, not a punishment. Ethan was already there, standing at the kitchen counter with the manila folder open. His tie was crisp, his face calm as always. The smell of coffee lingered faintly, though no one had offered me any. Chelsea was stuffing folded cardigans into a tote bag, one hand shaking just slightly. Derek walked between rooms like a ghost, not saying much. Margaret sat on the edge of a dining chair, clutching her purse like it might hold back time. "You're officially eligible for full title and access to the estate account," Ethan said, sliding the papers toward me. "Everything's in place?" I nodded, fingers brushing the pen beside the documents. Chelsea cleared her throat. I looked at her and she faltered, but she tried again. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for how we treated you. It wasn't right." Her voice was careful, like a vase you don't want to drop but no longer care to display. I tilted my head. An apology without change is just manipulation. Her eyes narrowed for a second. Reflex, not rage. Then she looked away. Margaret's voice came next, softer than I expected. You could have taken more. You could have humiliated us. Why didn't you? I looked at her. At the woman who once told me not to come if I didn't have something nice to wear. At the woman who gave my daughter the kind of smile you reserve for polite strangers. Because winning was never the goal, I said. Walking away was. I signed the last page. Ethan slid the folder shut with that same quiet efficiency, then pulled a small silver key from his blazer pocket. The house is yours, he said simply. Mia came running in through the open front door, her backpack bouncing. I want the room with the window, she shouted, twirling in a patch of sun that poured through the glass. Chelsea looked like she might say something, but she didn't. Margaret rose, purse in hand, but said nothing more. Derek gave a short nod to Ethan, then to me, and followed the others out. It was quiet after that, just the sound of the floor creaking beneath new ownership. I walked through the hall once, touching the door frames, the worn corners of a life I was now allowed to shape. Out in the front yard, the air was cool. A light breeze moved through the hedges like it was making room. I stood where the lawn met the stone path, feeling everything and nothing at once. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be included. I wasn't hoping someone would make room for me. I was the room. A car pulled up across the street. The window rolled down and Amy Quinn leaned out, sunglasses pushed to her forehead. Still want to build something? She called. I've got a few women ready. I didn't answer right away, just smiled, standing tall in the sun, as free as the wind around me. No chair needed. The lawn was empty now. No white chairs, no curated laughter. No one left to pretend they hadn't seen what they saw. Hailey didn't need to say anything. She stood in the doorway of the house that once excluded her and watched the last of their belongings disappear into the trunk of a car that never used to wait for her. Behind her, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor, catching on dust particles like stars freed from the corners. In her hand, the keys didn't feel heavy. They felt earned. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't slammed a door. But somehow she'd shaken the foundation more than any tantrum ever could. And that was the point. This wasn't just about property or payback or making someone cry in public. It was about drawing a line. Not with vengeance, but with truth. A truth too long buried under polite smiles and whispered insults, under inherited contempt dressed up as tradition. The same family who once told her she wasn't trying hard enough now stood stunned, realizing they'd underestimated the quiet strength of someone they'd refused to see. The same mother who judged her dress now had to face the daughter who didn't flinch. The same sister who mocked her struggles now had to explain to her children why they had to leave the house that was no longer theirs. In the end, no revenge was necessary, because nothing dismantles cruelty faster than consequence delivered by fact, not fury. Hailey didn't crush them. She simply stopped softening their impact. She stopped cushioning their mistakes with silence. Justice, in its purest form, isn't about humiliation. It's about rebalancing the scales. It's about finally hearing someone say, "You were right to walk away," even if no one dares to speak it aloud. Eleanor's letter had reminded her of something even deeper, something every person who's been sidelined needs to hear. You were never the problem. You were the mirror. And people who are used to power often hate their reflection when it's honest. Hailey didn't inherit just money. She inherited choice, space, voice. The power to set boundaries, not to seek revenge, but to ensure the harm doesn't repeat itself. To show her daughter, in real time, what it looks like to choose self-respect over inherited shame. What it means to break a cycle so it doesn't pass down disguised as tradition. Because injustice rarely begins with grand declarations. It creeps in through jokes that sting, expectations that shrink, and invitations that never come. It begins when someone tells you, "It's just how things are," and you start to believe it. And it ends when one person, Just one says, no, not anymore. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it signs a lease termination notice. Sometimes it stands on a porch with no need for a seat at the table because it now owns the table, the room, and the right to choose who gets to stay. No courtrooms, no explosions, just a woman, a key, and a choice that cannot be revoked. And in a world where so many people are taught to stay silent to survive, that quiet, deliberate act is revolutionary. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But once heard, it echoes beyond the room it freed. Perhaps standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but once heard, it echoes beyond the room it freed. Perhaps standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.